action planning your goals. So this is where we are actually going to take your goals and we are actually going to start taking effort and time and move them forward. So it's really exciting for me. This is a passion project of mine. This is something I'm really excited to get moved forward and to help you understand the actions that you can take to actually achieve your dreams and goals. So action planning your goals. So today we have we're going to have a quick intro to tell you a little bit more about who I am, talk for a moment about our previous session, and then go through the 4 steps that we can take to actually action plan our goals, and then make sure that you have access to the workbook or any of the other information that you would like to have access to. So that way you can take the course once it's up and ready. Again, this is my passion, like something that's a bit of a side project for me that I'm passionate about. So I haven't put much effort into kind of getting people on board online, getting into these webinars, but I am super excited to share this, and it will be going into an actual course online, regardless of whether people sign up here or not. So who am I? I am a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt. For the last 10 years, I've been helping organizations make their processes better, safer, faster, and more efficient. It's a super fun way to help organizations actually help their employees be better. So the thing that I always come back to with it is, how are your employees experiencing these processes? What can we do to make these processes better for your employees? Now, I've helped organizations with reliability problems like equipment reliability, maintenance issues, finance, right? So I've been a part of a lot of really large organizations and some really, really large projects. And regardless of whether the process or system is around operating a piece of equipment, or whether the process and system is around making our lives better, it doesn't really matter for the tools that I have in my tool set. What they're really all about is aligning us with value and reducing variation. So because of that, over the last 10 years, as I've learned more of these tools, I've been able to apply them to my personal life, which means that I've actually developed a structured tool that we can use to align us more with those things that really mean a lot to us. As we identify our goals and start to align ourselves more and more to those goals, we can accomplish a lot of things that maybe we thought were impossible. So things that I've done so far, I've hiked across Scotland, I've done a motorbike tour across Vietnam, I've done an ROV course in Scotland, graduated from the Albert Hall, I've kayaked with puffins, swum with whales in Tonga, I have seen Paul McCartney in Liverpool, and spent about 6 months in the Antarctic. So I've been all over the world now, and I've done this using the structured tool that I'm going to talk about today. So there are 4 steps within that. Now, where I started was in Bakersfield, California. So a really lovely place, a great place to raise a family. I started in the oil and gas industry, and I found that at 28, I had to really start over. So I had planned my life to be a teacher. I had planned my life to be basically at home, be a teacher, have a husband, have kids, and frankly, none of those things worked out. So at 28, I really had to start over. So I really understand what it is to struggle with each day and have to each day find your way to the next step and figure out how you're going to make your life better. So in our previous session, we talked about visions or values and passions. So really getting to know yourself better. So we have this whole big world out there. What is it that we're most interested in? Is it the mountains? Is it the beach, right? So really understanding kind of what direction you want your life to take. Now, with our values, we can start to get that picture that we say like, hey, maybe I want to go to the mountains. Okay, well, there's a lot of mountains out there. With our passions, we can start to say which of those mountains are important to us. Which of those mountain ranges are we interested in? Is it Patagonia or is it Washington, right? So if you didn't get to join us for that, that's fine. We're going to send out more of that information later so that you can access that. And just, hello, Jim. I know you can probably see that we don't have a lot of other people on, but I am sending this out to a few people afterwards that signed up that couldn't attend live. So we will go through everything in the course, and it is being recorded, but feel free to jump in if you so choose. So we're going to talk about here this 4-step tool that you can use to build a pathway towards your goal. Now, to do this activity, I use 3 things. I use my Post-its, my Sharpie, and a journal, right? So those are the 3 things that I use. You don't have to use a Post-it and a Sharpie. You don't have to use a journal necessarily. It's up to you to make this work for you. I'm going to show you the tools that I use. But regardless if you use the Post-its or not, I really want to encourage you to have maybe some paper or a Word document or something that you can take some notes on, so that you can start thinking about some of the goals that you have and noting those down, so that you can start brainstorming these activities. Now, I am going to send the link out after this to the course for those that didn't attend today, as well as for those that do, because frankly, I like to do this over 2 days, right? This is an activity that I usually do over 2 days. It might only take me 45 minutes total, but by doing it over 2 days, I can sleep on it because I'm always identifying new things that I want to work on. So I can kind of think about it over a day or 2 and add items to my list. So what are the 4 steps that we're going to go through? First, we are going to develop achievable actions. So we're going to identify those really big goals that we want to go after, and we're going to break those down into things that we can actually take action towards. Then we're going to narrow our priorities. So we have this idea that we can do everything, right? But the reality is not that we can do everything. And we're going to talk about that myth of multitasking, right? So then we're going to narrow down those priorities to those things that we can actually action and move forward in the next few weeks. Next, we will actually take steps towards those actions. So executing the actions that we identify so that we're taking those first steps towards our dreams. This can be a very uncomfortable place to be. This is where we're dealing with a lot of change, where we might be outside of our comfort zone. And finally, we're going to talk about celebrating our successes. So making sure that whatever we're doing, whatever we've executed so far, that we are enjoying that progress, we are enjoying the journey, and we are looking back and acknowledging all of the hard work that we have done, right? So this is where we kind of take it from identifying that big mountain range to actually the specific mountains that we want to climb, the paths that we're going to take to those mountains. So are we going to take the hard path or the easy path? Actually taking those steps on the path. And then as we're on the journey, we're going to look back and say, is this the direction I still want to go? Do I want to adjust at any point? Right? Now, if you're from a continuous improvement perspective, this might be similar to plan, do, check, act, the PDCA cycle that we use. So the first thing that I want you to do is to go ahead and identify those really big goals. So if you looked at your values and your passions, you should have some ideas of really big things that you would like to go after. So this might be, some people might want to buy an RV and travel around the US. Some people might want to achieve a certain career goal. They might want to go on a big vacation. They might want to start their own business, right? So this is where we start to develop those really big ideas. Now, if you have some challenges here, one thing that you can do, if you're taking this on our course, then you can see the other activities that we've had in line for you. But if you are joining us on the webinar, in our previous one, we talked about those values and passions. Another activity you can use to help yourself identify some of these big goals is with your journal. You can open up to a page and go ahead and draw a picture of what you want your life to be in 2035, right? So where would you be in 2035? What does that picture look like, right? So this is where we spend some time just kind of brainstorming and thinking about what our life could look like in 2035. What do we want our life to look like? So that's a fun exercise that we can use to help us start to identify these big goals. Now, the first time you do this exercise, it might be challenging for you to find some of these, but as you do it more and more frequently or over a longer period of time, it'll be easier for you to identify some of the big things that you want to go after. So here's some of the big goals that I've had on my list. So one of the things I wanted to do was switch industries. So I was in oil and gas, but I felt like the work that I was doing could be applicable across industries, and I wanted to get experience in other places. I wanted to do more meditation and yoga, work in Antarctica, buy a house, start a business. right? So these are some of the big goals that I've had over the last maybe 5 years. Now, these ones in red, I've completed. I've actually gone through using this exercise and achieved these goals. These ones in green are ones that are still in progress, that I'm still working on. So these are some of the ones that for me, I'm going to have to break down and kind of think about how I'm going to achieve those. Let me just take a look at the chat. Hey, Jim, hello. Let's see. Okay, breaking down your goals. So now that we have maybe some of these big lofty goals that we've identified, the next step that we're going to need to do is to actually break those down into some small achievable actions that we can take. Now, these big achievable goals might be something like working in Antarctica, right? I think that's just such a great example because that's a really hard one. So get a job in Antarctica. If I wrote that on a Post-it, it should be one action or idea per Post-it. If I was to write that down, that's something that would take me years possibly to achieve. And it would take me a lot of really small actions to get there, right? That's not something that I did overnight. So what we want to do for the actions that we break down is we want to make sure that they're things that we could complete within a week. So there's something that, like, if it was a vacation, it's a vacation that we could go on in a week. If it's like work in Antarctica, it might be something like take a certification or join a network, right? So these are small things that we could do within a week. They don't take 6 months to complete. When I was doing my master's, rather than saying finish my master's degree, I had finished this class, right? So I broke it down to the different classes so that I could see the progress that I was making. Now, the actions that we're going to be focused on for this exercise are things that are going to be achievable in the next year, in the next 12 months, right? So if it's something that you couldn't even do until next year or in 2 years, then it might not be something that we want to write down right now, but in 3 or 4 months, it might be something that gets added to our list. So in this activity, you're going to identify 15 to 30 actions that you can take. Now, I don't want you to go over 30. Okay, 30 is a lot. Now, in this exercise, one of the things that we are doing that is, to me, kind of exciting, and one of the reasons I like continuous improvement is because we move between the left and the right side of our brains. So when we're working in the left side of the brain, it's a great place analytically. So this is where we think in numbers and words, right? That we think in very tangible terms, analytical terms. And this is a place where we can create boundaries for ourselves, right? So this is a great place for us to identify our scope. And so in this activity, we've actually identified that scope. We've given ourselves some boundaries. Now, what we do throughout this exercise and throughout most of the rest of the exercise is we work in the right side of the brain. So the creative side, right? Where we're kind of have free reign to go in a lot of different directions. And that's why it's great to start with an exercise where you're actually drawing a picture, right? Because it kind of gets you into that right side of the brain. Now, within that, whether you're using this at home or at work, whenever we're doing brainstorming activities, we want to use yes and. So what do I mean by yes and? So if any of you have ever done improv like acting, right, where you do this acting with another person, and you are going to be given a prompt and you don't necessarily know what that scene entails. You're going to make it up as you go along. So in improv, we always want to make sure that our scenes continue, right? So we want to set up the other person so that we have a good back and forth. Now, what they found in improv is that if one actor responds in a way that's no, that shuts down that line of acting, of that prompt, right? So I always use, because I use this often in an office environment, I use, can I move my desk, right? So if I was role playing this with the manager and I asked the manager, can I move my desk? They said no. I'm going to walk out of the office. That ends the scene, right? That really ends it for you. Now, if I go to the manager and I say, can I move my desk? And they say yes, but I don't know if it's in the budget. I don't know about, you know, where you want to move it to. Are you sure that it's someplace that the person is okay with it? I have to get it approved, right? That slows the scene down, right? So that slows the energy of the scene down. Now, if you go to the manager and they say, yes, and I'm really thinking about, is everybody sitting in the right place, right? What about, you know, moving you to a place where other people are also working on your same project? Yes, and you know, and you can go back and forth, and you can see how the conversation there can really pick up. And I think in our own brains, we have the habit of shutting ourselves down. No, that's going to be too hard. Yes, but it's too expensive. Yes, but it takes too long. Yes, but it's all the way at the beach, right? That's too long of a drive. We're not doing that in this exercise. So as we go to narrowing, we are going to narrow down to those things that we're actually going to take action on. When we're brainstorming, we're just throwing everything up on the wall, okay? So I want you to have some consciousness of that activity that you might be doing that actually might shut down some of that right side of the brain, that creative thinking. So developing achievable actions. So this is an example of one of those achievable actions that we already talked about. So for me, it was buying a house. I wanted to buy a house. Now, what did that mean? I didn't really have a job that would qualify me for a loan. So consulting's up and down. So I had to actually get a job that would allow me to qualify for a loan. I had to decide where on earth did I want to live. I had to prep the down payment and establish a home base. So these are some of the things that I could think of right off the bat that started getting me in a direction of setting me up to be able to buy a house. These are small actions that I could take. Now, if we, let's see, let's go ahead and stop. Let's stop this for a second so that I can share my screen here. Okay, so let's say some of these that I didn't break down here. So more meditation and yoga. So for me, if I wanted to do this, I've always wanted to be able to do crow. So I can't do crow yet, right? So that might be a way that I can break down a yoga activity. Meditation. So maybe I want to go to 5 guided meditation courses or classes. Maybe I want to join a workshop on yoga, right? So a few years ago when I wanted to get into this more, I started going to some workshops. So maybe some full day classes, right? So these are some of those activities that I can start to work on. Get out of the oil and gas industry. So basically what this is saying is I want to transition to a different industry. So a lot of us might be looking at career goals. So that might be either getting into a certain type of career or moving our career. Maybe you were in oil and gas and you want to be in the medical field. Maybe you are in manufacturing, but you don't want to stay in manufacturing. You want to move into hospitality, right? So this is where you can start to think about, okay, I want to transition out of the industry that I'm in. What are some ways that I can transition? So networking is going to be a great way for you to find some transition opportunities. So within networking, I can maybe join 3 Facebook groups that are in the new industry that I want to move to. Now, at the time, I was really interested in sustainability. So because I work within improvement, I was really interested in understanding the link between some of the sustainability work that's being done out there and continuous improvement. Because we're using a lot of the same tools, and I knew sustainability was growing. So I can join 3 Facebook groups. I can attend. Now, I know here there is a local group called Lean Portland that is within this space, right? So they're a Lean Six Sigma organization. So that's a place that I can start to meet people. Now, whenever I meet people or start to use that networking opportunity, You want to make sure that if you go to a class, if you go to an event, you always need to have some kind of interaction or engagement with that community. So if you're joining a Facebook group, if you're going to attend a local event, I always encourage you to ask a question while you're there, or to talk to either some of the people in charge or one of the main people in charge, just to get an idea of what's going on in the group. The other thing you want to always do, because now we're going to actually put some of your goals out there, you're going to be able to talk to them about, yeah, hey, this is where I'm at now, and this is where I'm going. And you don't know necessarily how they can help support you, but they will find ways. You will find, inevitably, you end up finding out things from those conversations that might lead to your next goal, or they might lead you to actually change your mind about something, or connect you with someone else that can move you forward. So get out of the oil and gas industry. What else can I do? I could start, I could apply for 3 jobs in the industry I want. So what does that do? That teaches me a lot, even if I don't get the job. It teaches me about the types of interview questions that they're going to have. So when I was moving into working in Antarctica, I was actually able to get an interview with one of the expedition companies that I wanted to work for. Now, as excited as I was about that interview, it was quite disappointing because it turned out I really didn't have a lot of the qualifications they were looking for. But as a result of that interview, I knew I needed my firearms certificate. I knew I needed a boater license. I knew I needed some kind of naturalist experience. I knew it would help if I had worked in the Antarctic in one of the bases at the Antarctic, and if I worked there, that I did some of the tour guiding volunteer stuff that you're able to do, which I actually did. I ended up working at McMurdo and doing guided tours of the Discovery Hut. So that application process or possible interview process can actually garnish a lot of information, so that maybe not this year you get that job, but in 2 years you get that job. Now, the other thing for me was that I identified a bridge between where I was and where I wanted to go. So getting out of the oil and gas industry meant that currently I'm doing Lean Six Sigma consulting in oil and gas. What I want to do, which is broader, was management consulting, right? So I got a job in oil and gas at a management consulting firm, where I could then use that to say, okay, now I don't want to work in that industry. Can you give me some of the jobs that you have in other industries, right? So that allowed me to have exposure to other areas. So you might be able to find that as well. Get job in management consulting, right? So that's one of the things that I could work towards. Now, the other thing that we could do, get out of oil and gas industry. One of the other things that we could do, I just had it in my head. Take a certification. So get a sustainability certification, or get an, eventually what I ended up getting was an agile certification as well. So you can look up some of the certifications in that area. Now we're in yes and, so we're not saying we're going to do all these things. These are just ideas of things that we could do. Now what's funny as well is I have kind of random things that have stuck on my list, so they don't all have to be perfectly within these bigger lofty goals that we're going after. So I have random things on my list as well, like take a writing course, or win a contest, or see the Aurora Australis, right? So we have some things that'll make it up on our Post-its, on our boards, on our thoughts, that are going to be less specific to our bigger lofty goals, but are going to bring us happiness and excitement. So let's talk about that myth of multitasking. Now that we're starting to get so many items maybe up on the wall, if you're using your Word document, hopefully that you're documenting there. If you're using Post-its, you're getting those down, or a piece of paper that you're starting to note down all of these different activities that you could do, right? That you could break down these big lofty goals, or just random things like win a contest that you want to be able to achieve. So we've got all of these different goals. And I always think of multitasking as juggling, right? We've got all of these things that we're having to juggle. Now, what we've done with the achievable look at our goals is we've kind of made all of these balls the same size. So I have here, we have a basketball and a beach ball and even a bowling ball off to the side, right? But in reality, we've actually made all of these balls kind of the same size, hopefully in that last activity. So if they're too big, hopefully we're breaking them down. Now, as we're trying to juggle all of these items that we do every single day, what we find is randomly people throw us more balls, or there's things that we want to do, right? So if we have 30 of these going, we've identified maybe 30 different actions that we want to take. It's too many. Eventually, we are going to drop some of the balls. What that means is that we could drop the ones that mean the most to us, right? So this is where we become a jack of all trades, but a master of none, where we've missed out to see the vital few for the trivial many. So what we want to do is to make sure that we are only juggling what we can actually handle, okay? So to do that, we are only going to select about 3 of these actions that we are ever going to work on at one time. Now, to narrow down those priorities to these 3, this is the activity that I like to use. Now, if you're familiar with continuous improvement, this is where we would do an affinity exercise and then maybe even put it on an impact effort diagram. So we might even look at it on a 2x2. Now, I prefer not to use that activity for this, but instead do a grouping, because for me, the effort, so by using kind of some of the other activities that we could use to narrow this down, it doesn't ring true for me. For me, this is the best way to ensure that I have a balanced portfolio, essentially, of the actions that I want to take, and that I don't have all actions that are about my job, but I want to make sure personally that I balance those, okay? Because otherwise I know me, I can get very caught up in one thing, in just looking at a job, in just looking at getting to some level of certification or finishing some sort of course. So I've gone ahead and I just took all of those boxes that we put together on the other sheet, and we are going to just look at those as individual boxes. We're going to take away some of the big ones, right? Because those were just helping us to identify what it is we wanted to work on. So we can start to group these. Now, to be fair, the items that I chose, the big items that I chose to throw on here as examples, are going to kind of be all within one group. So a lot of the house stuff is going to all relate to money. So the way that I like to break it down is into 3 groups, into mind, body, and money. Okay, so by grouping these different activities, if you're using Post-its, you would have all 30 Post-its up on the wall, and you would be able to take those Post-its and just put them into 3 different groups. And those groups for me that I like to use for my balance is mind. So this would include learning and spirituality. Bodies, these would be things that physically would make me either like healthier. So this could be any food goals of not eating or eating certain types of foods. It could be exercise goals. And then money. So these are goals that are going to be maybe financially associated. Now, I'm sure people could argue with me on whether money or financial is a good one to have on here when we're talking about personal development. Now, for me, it's essential because it's a foundation, right? So if I don't have money, I can't do a lot of the other activities that I want to do. So to me, it's a way to make sure that I am making myself sustainable and stable. All right. The other thing to consider is within the learning scope, that might also include things that connect back to maybe your job or money. So some of the, like a master's, when I went after my master's degree, I would actually put that into the mind one, right? But still that does have a financial connection, but that's a personal personally, I'm using it to learn more about myself. So here we have being able to do the pose crow. That would be something that's physical. Guided meditation, that's going to be something that's more spiritual to me, or something that's going to grow my mind. A lot of these are going to be jobs. So we talked about some of these. So attend local lean Portland. The sustainability certification, maybe I would put into mind because it's something that I'm going to have to study for, and I'm going to get to learn more about. So once I'm at this point where I've grouped each of my items, now you'll have 15 to 30, so hopefully it'll be a little more balanced. It might also help you say, hey, what am I doing to help make myself healthier or develop my mind? The other thing I'd encourage people to do is to think about your mental health. Right? So I always encourage people that if it's necessary, if it's something that you're open to definitely consider going to therapy or any of those pieces that you might want to do. So that might include reading a self-help book. That might include, like I said, going to therapy. But it's really important that you keep yourself in a healthy mindset, right? So I don't really delve into here that mental health aspect, so overcoming depression and things like that. But you can identify actions here that you know can address some of those issues. So for depression, we know that exercise helps. So you might be able to identify actions and work with your therapist to identify actions within these that can help you overcome some of those challenges. So once you have these priorities narrowed, so we arrange them by priority. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through here and I'm going to say, which one do I want to do first? Now, for me personally, I want to do the meditation classes more than the sustainability certification. I want to do a workshop on yoga more than I want to do crow. For this one, so we have a bunch in this one. So attending a local Lean Portland class or mixer, that one I want to do the most. Join 3 Facebook sustainability groups. Now, I have to decide where I want to live before I might get a job in that location, right? I want to apply for those jobs, so that one's going to go before. So I'm going to decide where I want to live. I'm going to apply for some of those jobs. These 2 might be the same or similar. Management consulting, get a job to qualify for a loan. So I might even be able to combine those. And then I'm going to prep that down payment and maybe establish a home base. So that's a way that I could possibly group or organize those to say which is the one that I want to do first. So once I know the ones that I want to do first, I'm next going to look at that first one. And I'm just going to say, okay, of these 3, which one do I want to do first? So I want to do this one, and then this one, and then this one. Okay, and then I'm going to grab the next one of those 3, the next one of that list, and I'm going to organize those. Okay, so I want to do this, and then I can join that group. Actually, I want to join the group, and then I can know which certification I want, and then I can do crow. Right, so then we can continue to do that so that we have down the different actions that we want to take. So we would continue doing that. And we would just go ahead and to narrow our priorities to move away from that myth of multitasking, we're just going to select the first 3. So those are the first 3 that we are going to work on, right? So when we're doing this activity, as you're following along maybe the next few days, you would go ahead and take all those Post-its, get them in that order of what you would want to complete first, and you would go ahead and take on those first 3 items. So taking those first steps. So for me, you can see that those 3 don't match what we just looked at because these are actually the ones that I am working on right now. So these are actually up on my wall next to me. Sometimes they'll be on my mirror in the bathroom, so where I brush my teeth every day. Sometimes they'll be next to my bed. But I always have those 3 Post-its, those 3 things that I am working on somewhere so that I see them every day. And every day when you see them, you want to ask yourself, what can I do today to get myself closer to completing that? Right? What can I do today to help me get to the point where I can do the crow pose? Right? So I can practice more yoga, which will get me to the place that I can do crow. Maybe I can't do a long distance hike to be able to spend 2 or 3 weeks walking 250 miles, but I can walk so many miles today, right? So that's what I've had to kind of do within quarantine, is just settle for maybe walking, 5 miles a day. Take a writing course. So this is actually the most recent one that I've gotten up there that I've pulled up. So as you complete these, so let's say you go to 5 meditation classes, that means this one's the next one up, right? So now you're going to take this one on and you're going to start working on that one, the join 3 Facebook groups, right? So we continue in this way, actioning and going after our goals. Let's see here, right? So the other thing that this is going to bring up as you start to execute actions, this really brings up some issues in terms of leaving your comfort zone, as well as dealing with change. So change is hard. Making changes, even changes you want or excited about, means that something else might be ending, right? So it's really important that we are compassionate to ourselves as we go through these activities and we see some changes in our life, as we experience the discomfort or leaving our comfort zone that is inevitable in doing this. So even with small changes, we experience the 5 stages of grief, right? So it's important as you take these steps that you expect some of those challenges. You might feel some anger or denial or bargaining. You might get a little depressed here and there if you are leaving things behind. Now, what we do know is things are going to change. Life is going to change, right? What this allows us to do is it allows us to align ourselves with things that we want in our life so that it can change in the direction that means the most to us, that has the most value to us. So we want these to be visible. You want to put them in a place where you can see them frequently. You want it to be daily. You want to connect with them at least once a day to read them over and think about them, because you're going to move towards what you're looking at. And then you want to think, what can I do today? What can I do this week to move this forward, to complete this action, right? And then you're going to do that super hard thing, which is taking the first step, okay? So taking that first step towards completing. So this is a really hard moment. This was my first step on the West Highland Way. So this is where I hiked 100 miles across Scotland. And this is a picture of me at the end and kind of in the middle of the beautiful scenery that I saw in Scotland. So what you don't see here is that I'm leaning against the sign because I can barely stand, right? What you don't see here is all of the fear and nervousness that I had on that first step, right? On staying the night at this hostel and just feeling so nervous and unsure of myself. But taking those first steps is so, so important. Now, I want to just touch on for a moment, some of these challenges and why it's important for us to overcome them, why they can be something that's really special that lasts within our lives for a really long time. And I want to do that through what's called the power of moments. So if you've read this book by Chip and Dan Heath, they talk about moments that really stay with us throughout our lives, that their particular focus in the book is really on businesses and how businesses can use this to create experiences for their customers. But this isn't just about businesses. These are about any moments in our lives that stick with us, right? So let's think about, we can think about times in our lives that were significant, like a wedding or being at the hospital with a family member, right? These are times where we might experience these moments, and there's elements within each of those that are consistent. So what Chip and Dan Heath did was they identified 4 things that are present in these moments that last with us, right? Elevation, pride, insight, and connection. So elevation, that means that you're out of your comfort zone. It's not normal. It's something that's different, right? So at a wedding, you're not usually wearing the same clothes. At a hospital, you're in an environment that's different. In a school setting, maybe instead of being inside, you're actually outside, being taught outside. For us right now, something that will stick with us is doing school online, right? For students, that's going to be something that makes it different, that makes this moment different. The next thing that these moments are going to have is insight. So this is discovering things that we didn't know before. So tripping over the truth. So you actually discovering more about yourself or more about things that you didn't know. Now, as we achieve these actions, we are going to discover things that we don't even know we're going to discover. Okay, so that tripping over the truth, having new insights. The other thing, surprisingly for me, as someone that likes to solo travel, as an introvert, is connection, is struggling together, is sharing these moments with other people. So inevitably, even though these moments that we're talking about are personal achievements, inevitably you are going to somehow be connected with someone else. And as you do that, that connection, that human connection, is going to make these moments last for you longer, last in your memory. And finally, the fourth is milestones, is celebrating our successes, is acknowledging a milestone like a wedding, like a funeral acknowledges that person's life, right? So having these moments in our lives where we're actually acknowledging that we've accomplished something, that we've moved to a different level. It's very important. Now, I cover this because what this means is if you keep these things in mind, you can create transformative moments for yourself that are going to last for you and your family for years to come, right? So it's really exciting to think that if we take a moment and actually make sure that we are working together, that we are having moments of connection, maybe in places or in ways that are different than normal, which I imagine a lot of the actions you would identify are. And then if we actually stop and celebrate these milestones, look back, celebrate our achievements, then we can actually make these moments last for us longer than just this little blip in time. So it's so important that as we progress, that we acknowledge our progress, that we look back and we appreciate our journey, that we celebrate our successes, right? So this is the power of incremental change. So I'm not really looking at radical transformation here. I'm looking at over time, each day, you are taking actions that are going to make your life better. So that at a certain point, when you complete these actions, you look back and you appreciate how far that you've come. So every time you complete a Post-it, I like to use my journal to document this. I am not someone that's good at acknowledging and celebrating my successes. So what I've had to do is I've actually created a journal where I identify things. I take the Post-its when they're completed and I actually put them into the journal, and I have to write a little section here about that experience. So this helps me to understand how far that I've gone. It helps me to celebrate my successes. So class on marine biology, I had always wanted to take one. Now I actually am able to volunteer with marine biology organizations, with cetacean organizations, which is crazy. When I wrote this Post-it in February of last year, I would have never thought that I'd be where I am today. I wanted to create a book on Amazon. So edit pictures for the book. This was in December of 2018. I just posted that book during the pandemic a few months ago, right? So these actions we want to acknowledge so that we can look back and appreciate that progress, so that we can celebrate those successes and have these moments be transformative, right? Now, this might not be the right ritual for you. This might not be the right activity. Maybe for you, the Post-its isn't what rings true. For me, that tangibility and the accountability that comes with the tangibility is really, really important. So that's why I push using the Post-its. What I want more than anything is that something that you've watched today helps you to actually take action and improve your life. So if that is just one of the things that we've talked about today, that's great. If you actually do the posted activity, I'm so excited because I really see the potential for you to achieve goals that you never thought that you could achieve, similar to what I have done. So this is an evergreen process, right? So once we develop those achievable actions, those 15 to 30 goals, we're going to narrow those to maybe the 3 that we're going to work on. We're actually going to execute those. Now, my rule of thumb that I use is once I complete 5, once I put 5 in my journal, I go back and I develop those achievable actions again. I reorganize them and I fix my priorities. That can also be because they're stagnant. Maybe the ones that you have up there are ones that you just don't connect with anymore. So that's okay. It's a good chance to go back. This usually ends up being about 3 to 4 times a year that I end up doing this activity to align my goals. And then we want to make sure, like I said, that we are always celebrating our successes. So if you want to contact me, this is the information to do it. For those of you, Jim, those of you, just you, that have joined us today on the live webinar, I will be sending out the links to this course to see this recording, as well as to the full course, which will be posted in the next few weeks. Like I said, this is a passion project for me on the side of continuous improvement. So we're getting that information up there and making sure that it's available to people as we grow. But we don't have it all up yet.